It is our great pleasure to have our next guest in the studio, Veronika Tsepkalo, founder of the Belarus Women's Foundation. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So as we're looking at this whole situation, there's been a massive uproar after the death of the Polish border guard. We know that the situation on the Polish-Belarusian border is very tense as of now. What is your opinion on what is happening currently in that very area?
First of all, I would like to express my condolences to the family and to the loved ones of the soldier who lost his life. What's happening in Belarus started many years ago, and in 2020 we all witnesses the revolution in Belarus, and Belarus people are going through repressions, through Lukashenko repressions for 4 years now. Now we can all witness that Lukashenko is a real threat not only to Belarusian peoples, who he has been murdering for 4 years and putting in a prison, torturing them, beating them up, but also he became a real threat for the European Union citizens, including Poland. Therefore, we believe if you do not make concrete steps, the situation will get worse, especially for Poland, because we're sharing the same border with Belarus. Taking this opportunity, I would like to call out and reach out to the Prime Minister and President Duda of Poland, also the Minister of Foreign Affairs Sikorski, just, to issue an ultimatum to Lukashenko, because you cannot stop a dictator with a democracy in this case, because we see that the situation is getting much worse, And we urge you, please shut down the cargo border between Belarus and Poland, because there are 40 trains with Chinese goods that are going from China, Russia and Belarus to European Union countries. And this is 16 million export coming from Belarus and coming from China and Russia. So we urge you, please shut down the border at least for 2 weeks, and you will see that this crisis, migrant crisis, will be cleared up.
Yeah, perhaps China could put pressure on Belarus instead of others.
But China, in this case, will definitely put the pressure, as well as Russian President Putin. He is going to put the pressure on Lukashenko, because all the, you will see railways collapse at Belarus-Polish border, and this is the only way we can stop the dictator at this point. No negotiations, any politicians will have the capability to talk to Lukashenko and persuade him just to make any democratic steps, because this person understands only the language of real actions. Tweet democracy doesn't work for Belarus. Tweets and social media posts will not solve the situation. And once again, if you would like to save the lives of your people, you need to make concrete actions. Shut down the border.
So in both of these scenarios, so we have one scenario where the Polish officials decide to shut down the border, as you said, for a particular period of time, or they don't, and they're trying to speak to the representatives of the regime. Which one of these scenarios do you think is going to lead to a further escalation? And what could we possibly expect when we say escalation?
The situation will get worse. We have no doubts about it. There were many negotiations even before 2020 with Lukashenko. But this person, he's a real terrorist, not only for Belarusian peoples, but also for EU citizens. And for example, we recently sent a letter to European leaders with the request, to shut the border. 40 Nobel Prize laureates signed this letter. Many people know. All Belarus opposition leaders supported and signed this paper. So we believe this is the only step that can help the crisis at Belarus-Polish border at this point, because no negotiation. Lukashenko will not listen to anyone at this point. This person does not understand the language of democracy, the language of diplomacy. He needs real actions, otherwise the situation will get worse.
Europe has had a difficult time in dealing with Alexander Lukashenko. That's for absolute sure. And actually the punitive measures haven't really been put in place, I think, in an attempt so that the people of Belarus aren't negatively affected by such actions. But now we face other threats, not only the hybrid threats on the border, but also espionage and saboteurs originating from Lukashenko's services. So how does Europe properly deal with that? How does Poland properly deal with that?
As you noted very correctly, the sanctions that European Union and the United States imposed on Lukashenko regime basically hit us, ordinary Belarusian people, because currently we're the ones who are suffering inside of the country. We're not able to come back home because you will be immediately imprisoned. And also we're suffering outside of Belarus because, our banking accounts has been shut down. We're having the issues with the visas. We're having the issues with legalizations. So the sanctions that were currently imposed on Lukashenko backfires Belarusians people. So the only way
we don't want that to happen.
Exactly.
Right?
That's why you need to impose the sanctions on the people who is around Lukashenko, because otherwise, as I just mentioned, it backfires Belarusian, ordinary Belarusian people, medium business from Belarus, small business from Belarus, but not Lukashenko. So please, if you impose the sanctions, target his, circle, the people who are close to him, the people who can influence him. This is number one. Number two, as I mentioned, you can also help us to open a criminal case in the International Criminal Court in The Hague, because we did a lot of things to open the case. We collected the testimonies of the women, of the civilians who was beaten up, who was tortured, who was illegally imprisoned in Belarus, and we filed the case. It was not one initiative, it was a multiple initiatives when we sent these testimonies to the International Criminal Case. So far, unfortunately, the case has not been opened. So this is a real step that can, make a difference. And the third one, just shut down the border, cargo border between Belarus and European Union, because in this case, President of China, President of Russia will put a massive pressure on Lukashenko. And believe me, as any coward, Lukashenko will do everything possible just to make sure that, he is not under pressure. So we need concrete, real steps instead of, tweets, instead of verbal support, or instead of, we need real actions. This is the most important.
I find it interesting that you finished off this sentence by talking about the sort of signs of support or signs of engagement when it comes to social media, like, for example, Twitter. X, known formerly as Twitter now. I wanted to ask you about, because we speak a lot about our perspective, our Polish perspective, when it comes to this dynamic and whatever is happening on the Polish-Belarusian border. How is it seen in Belarus? What's the access to information, and what is the public opinion when it comes to whatever is happening on the border between Poland and Belarus right now?
Well, actually, in Belarus, there are no independent mass media, first of all. In Belarus, unfortunately, we have so-called propaganda television. All the state-owned TV channels, they convey the message what Lukashenko wants the people to know. So basically, you need to be young, you need to have the access to the third-party information, like from internet. In Belarus, you're put in the prison only for being sign up for any Telegram channels. So the police officer, when they stops you on the street, the first thing they do, they check your phone, they check the Telegram channels you're signed up for. So therefore, it's not easy inside of the Belarus to see the real picture. Though, of course, many people, there are many intelligent, smart, and educated people, and they see what's happening. But once again, when you deal with a terrorist, he doesn't understand the language of diplomacy.
So would you say that the propaganda technique is actually working with the older generations, with the people who might not have access to
propaganda works against the European Union, because propaganda TV says, look what Europeans or Polish did to Belarusians. Now you're not able to travel to the European Union. We used to have the visas for 60 euros. Before it was 60 euros. Now Belarusians people need to pay up to 500 euros just to get any EU visa, because of the queues in the embassy, the queues in the agencies that helps you to get a visa. So basically propaganda backfires. On the state-owned TV, they say, like, look at their democracy, because they impose sanctions and they backfire you. So what do you want? You want to be part of this so-called European Union? So he uses this information quite smart, Lukashenko. And he puts this information in the mindset of Belarus people that, doesn't make Poland or any other European Union country in a nice light. Because, like what we have now is with all these sanctions, our life became much worse, unfortunately.
Certainly. And finally, the war in Ukraine I'd say there was a slightly different approach to Belarus from the West before the full-fledged scale Russian invasion of Ukraine broke out. Do you think that that has hurt the plight of Belarusians, that the focus is more on Ukraine now?
Definitely. Many Belarusian people believe if Western countries would support us back in 2020, there wouldn't be a war in Ukraine. Back then, we did not know the plan, President Putin plan to use Belarus soil to attack Ukraine, because for us it's a big pain. For all for majority of Belarus people, it's a big pain, the war in Ukraine, because all of us, we have family members, we have friends, we have co-workers. During the Soviet Union, we have people where lived in the different countries. That's why we have very close close relations with the Ukrainians. And what's happening now in Ukraine, it's a big pain for us. But our big belief and firm belief, if you would help us back in 2020 to fight against Lukashenko, to open the criminal charges case against him, it would help to not even start the war in Ukraine. And we believe, when Ukraine wins, it's a matter of time, the situation both in Russia and Belarus will change definitely.
Certainly. Well, we all have a lot of work to do to help the plight of Ukrainians. Veronika Tsepkalo, founder of Belarus Women's Foundation, thank you very much.
Thank you
for joining us.
Today.
Thank you.